Consistent fall weather today. Cloud and some rain. It might actually stop. Let's see. And what did I read today? I guess this one was kind of one of those news where countries are accusing each other of supplying their adversary with drones or parts to make those drones. How about this one? This one says Ukraine sends letter to G7 on the use of Western parts Shahed drones. A letter from the Ukrainian government to the G7 nations says that some of the components used in the manufacture of Shahed-type drones come from companies based in the West, The Guardian reported on September 27th. The letter alleges that more than 50 electrical components originally stemmed from companies located in countries that are both allied with Ukraine and involved in the sanctioned coalition. The countries named include US, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, Canada, and Japan. It makes me wonder again, in these situations, can you ever truly avoid stuff from other countries just with the way everything has been, I guess, operated with trade and all that? A piece of plastic, a little piece of metal, like maybe a screw. It says the drones, which were originally produced in Iran and first used in attacks against Ukraine in September 2022, are cheap to manufacture and when used in swarms can be a headache for Ukrainian air defense, Air Force spokesperson Yuri Inhat said. And with this part here, is the solution always regulations? It says the letter also knows that it is unclear if the Western companies mentioned were fully aware that their components were being used in drone production because the parts are largely of a commercial nature and are thus poorly regulated. The components have typically reached Iran through intermediary countries, thereby evading sanctions. So would that be the case here? More regulations. Do you think that would actually help? And this was also interesting to learn that writers' strike in the US has been lasting for a long time, where there were disputes about contracts and it didn't seem like the studios wanted to budge, with a lot of the topic being about AI, for example. Writers, I guess, rights in terms of their work and all that. Well, apparently they reached an agreement, and it's kind of interesting to read what they say specifically about the AI. It says here, for their agreements of artificial intelligence, we establish regulations for the use of artificial intelligence on MBA-covered projects in the following ways. AI can't write or rewrite literary material, and AI-generated material will not be considered source material under the MBA, meaning that AI-generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights. A writer can choose to use AI when performing writing services if the company consents and provided that the writer follows applicable company policies, but the company can't require a writer to use AI software, with I guess ChatGPT being an example. When performing writing services, the company must disclose to the writer if any materials given to the writer have been generated by AI or incorporated AI-generated material. And then the last one, it says the WGA reserves the right to assert that exploitation of writers' material to train AI is prohibited by MBA or other law. So why this is interesting is because outside of even these industries, a lot of people are having disputes about AI rights and all that. So with this example, will other places follow suit, especially in, I guess, creative types of fields? And the last thing I read, which is kind of interesting, it relates to that story how here in Canada, people in Parliament were literally praising an actual Nazi, and when word got around, you can imagine the backlash. Well, this was kind of interesting because apparently now that this has become public, some places are asking for this guy's extradition, because I would imagine if he was part of the Nazi back then, he killed a lot of people, and that's what I would assume anyways. It says here, Polish officials wants Canada to extradite 98-year-old Nazi veteran. A Polish government minister said this week he had, quote, taken steps toward the possible extradition of Yaroslav Hunka, the 98-year-old veteran of a Waffen SS unit who drew applause during the visit of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Canada's parliament. As mentioned yesterday, that speaker did resign, and it says Polish Education Minister Czesław Karnik now wants to know if Hunka should be prosecuted. In my view, the scandalous events in the Canadian Parliament, which involved honoring in the presence of President Zelensky, a member of the criminal Nazi SS Galician formation, I have taken steps toward the possible extradition of this man to Poland, he said Tuesday. Poland's ambassador to Canada, Witold Zaleski, said the move was a preliminary bid to establish whether Hunka is responsible for crimes committed in Poland as a basis for extraditing him. What an interesting turn of events for that. Would that actually be legal. I don't think there's actually any agreement like they said here in terms of Canada and Poland being able to extradite people. But now that it's known that this guy was part of that, I guess, group, would he actually be a wanted man in that sense? What would happen in this case? That's kind of interesting. I find it actually kind of fascinating in general. If that's true, or if this guy was part of that, let's say, regime, killed all these people and all that, how is it that he actually got here, lived here, and still is here, like, in that sense? It's kind of interesting to think about in that case, because you would assume anyone during that time or being associated with that group would be, quote, banned, correct? So what would you think would happen in this case, and would you think that would be the appropriate thing to do, to extradite the person? I guess the rain isn't stopping here, unfortunately. Let's experiment with the archive today. Alright, see you guys later.